Good evening, you are watching ReNEWS in English. I am Sona Tumanyan. The main event of the week is the visit of the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian to Armenia. Pashinyan and Pezeshkian signed a joint statement following negotiations in Yerevan. Meanwhile, it is noted that Armenian Foreign Minister Ararat Mirzoyan and Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi have signed a 2025-2027 consultation plan between the foreign ministries of the two countries. Tehran and Yerevan will sign 10 memorandums of understanding, reports the Iranian news agency Tansem. It is also noted that the Pashinyan-Pezeshkian negotiations lasted an hour and a half. Deputy Prime Minister Meher Grigoryan and Iranian Vice President Sayed Hamid Pourmohammadi also met. According to the official press release, Meher Grigoryan considered this meeting a good opportunity to exchange views on issues of mutual interest. President Pezeshkian has already managed to meet with the Iranian community in Armenia and visit the Blue Mosque. A visit by Pezeshkian to Belarus is also planned for today, immediately after his trip to Armenia.
Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian in Armenia for his first official visit, and Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan met today and signed a joint statement.
We have set a strategic goal to increase the volume of bilateral trade with Iran, bringing it first to $1 and then to $3 billion. The two countries have excellent cooperation in various sectors, including transport, energy, electricity, engineering and technical services, culture and sports, medicine, and also pharmaceuticals.
Nikol Pashinyan announced that there is a bilateral agreement to elevate relations to a strategic level. Following a private meeting between the leaders, documents on economic, scientific, cultural, and other topics were signed by officials from the respective sectors.
Armenia is considered a gateway to the Eurasian Union, and the agreements we've had in this period, starting from this April-May, the preferential trade agreements have been approved, and we have eliminated customs duties on 87% of goods.
They also discussed expanding infrastructure between the two countries and the issue of the roads in Syunik, which are already under construction and used by Iranian trucks. Iran and Armenia have agreed to build a second bridge in Agarak. The Persian Gulf to Black Sea railway connection is a key focus, said Iran's Minister of Roads and Urban Development.
Considering that Armenia is a landlocked country, we also have agreements with Armenia in the port sector. And this, along with the logistics centers we have in our southern ports on the shores of the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, will help to increase and facilitate transit between Iran, Armenia, and European countries, as well as from Iran to the countries of East Asia.
Deputy Prime Minister Meher Grigoryan and Iranian Vice President Sayed Hamid Pourmohammadi also held a meeting. Meher Grigoryan considered this meeting a good opportunity to exchange views on issues of mutual interest, according to the official statement. As a reminder, the Iranian delegation led by the president arrived in Armenia yesterday. Pezeshkian met with the Iranian community in our country and visited the Blue Mosque. Today, he also participated in a business forum. The president of the Islamic Republic will depart from our country for Belarus, also on an official visit. Simon Hovhannisyan, ReOpen Media.
There are concerns from Tehran that the agreement signed in Washington on August 8 could affect the entire region's balance of power. At first, of course, opinions from the Iranian side were contradictory and ambiguous, and among the many views on the document, the most anticipated was, of course, the statement from Iran's leader. What is the subtext of Pezeshkian's visit, or does it have one at all?
The agreements signed in Washington, which address the new road passing through Syunik, are not viewed on the international stage as merely an infrastructure project. For Armenia, according to its government, it is an economic opportunity, but for neighboring Iran, particularly for the advisors of the Supreme Leader and the Islamic Revolutionary Corps members, it is a strategic challenge. Tehran is concerned that this road could reshape the entire region's balance of power.
The Armenian-American agreements regarding the road through Syunik, which borders Iran, contain questions and ambiguities that the Iranian president will discuss with Armenia's leadership.
For many years, Tehran has declared that its shared border with Armenia is a red line. For Iran, this border is not only an economic route to the Caucasus, but also a strategic gateway to the north. It is with this logic that the idea of a new road through Syunik is perceived in Iran not as a commercial one, but as a potential political and military threat.
Representatives of the Armenian authorities have assured us that there will be no American forces in Armenia because of this road, and that even American private security companies, which are present in some countries in the region, will not establish a presence in Armenia under the pretext of this road.
In an article written on the eve of Masoud Pezeshkian's visit, Abbas Araghchi stressed that the visit not only marks another diplomatic meeting, but also reaffirms the joint commitment of Armenia and Iran to opening new horizons in their relations.
Historical ties, geographical proximity, complementary economies, and converging regional interests provide powerful momentum for strengthening cooperation. We see limitless opportunities from joint infrastructure projects that physically connect our peoples to academic exchanges that connect our minds, as well as energy partnerships that boost our development, to cultural initiatives that celebrate our shared heritage. Relying on our common historical past and the horizons of a shared future, Iran is ready to cooperate with Armenia to write the next chapter of a long-lasting friendship, a chapter that will undoubtedly bring greater prosperity and security to both our peoples, the region, and beyond. The future of Iran-Armenia relations is very bright, and no one can divert it from its course.
Araghchi stressed that, as natural allies, the shared border is not just a geographical reality, but also a bridge for cooperation in the fields of energy, transport, human connections, and regional security. In contrast to the east-west route mentioned in the text in relation to Trump, the head of Iran's Foreign Policy Department emphasized the north-south international transport corridor passing through Armenia. At the same time, Tehran also warns of economic dangers. The Iranian president points out that American companies often come forward as investors, but may in fact be pursuing political or intelligence objectives. This shifts the perception of the entire project from the economic sphere to the security domain. Armenia declares that the road will be exclusively under its sovereign control and that no foreign forces will be stationed there. The concerns voiced by Iran show that the Sunik Road has long since moved beyond the scope of an infrastructure project. It has become a geopolitical issue from the perspective of the clash or alignment of interests of American, Iranian, and other regional actors.
Sticking to the topic of Iran, let's address the reaction there to the events of recent days. What is happening in this period is being compared to the realities of 200 years ago. For example, one expert compared this to the Treaty of Gulistan, as a result of which the geopolitical reality of the South Caucasus was turned upside down. For 200 years, Russia had immense influence in the region, and now it seems that influence is weakening right before our eyes.
The Trump route has shaken Iranian political and expert circles. Some are even saying that what has happened is worse than the Treaty of Gulistan, which had fateful consequences for Iran, completely changing the geopolitical reality of the South Caucasus.
At the beginning of the 19th century, Tsarist Russia intensified its foreign policy in the Transcaucasus. Throughout the 18th century, the Russian Empire was preparing its political plan to take control of the region, and this only became a reality at the beginning of the 19th century. In 1801, eastern Georgia was annexed.
Under the Treaty of Gulistan, Shunik and Artsakh were ceded to Russia. It was from 1813 that Russia established itself in our region, and from that day on, for exactly 210 years, Russian influence here was not even disputed. And now events have begun that have ultimately led to the agreements regarding the Trump route in Sunik.
On February 10, 1828, with the Treaty of Turkmenchay, the Khanates of Yerevan and Nakhichevan also came under Russian rule. This means that the greater part of eastern Armenia came under Russian rule within the first 3 decades of the 19th century.
After Gulistan, the situation was so fragile that a new war in the region was inevitable. At the instigation of the British, the Persian Shah attacked again and was defeated again. This led to the Treaty of Turkmenchay, which formed a new, fundamental Iranian-Russian settlement in the South Caucasus. Today, the borders of Armenia and Azerbaijan with Iran are drawn precisely by Turkmenchay, and the author was Griboyedov, who was Russia's ambassador in the peace negotiations. It was through his efforts that hundreds of thousands of Armenians, displaced 200 years earlier, were returned from New Jolfa.
The Persians, who signed those 2 treaties, never violated them for 2 whole centuries. Already in the first months of the Great Patriotic War, Soviet troops entered Iranian territory. This meant that Russia did not keep its word that there should be eternal peace between the 2 states, but Persia remained faithful to it.
Paris and London, St. Petersburg, and Constantinople all were forced to come to terms with the new reality. Not only today's borders, but also the basic demographic picture were created by the Russians through the treaties of Gulistan and Turkmenchay, and And what is happening today is viewed in Iranian expert circles as a challenge to the 200-year-old status quo. Ani Hovhannisyan, ReOpen Media.
New strikes followed the latest negotiation process. On the night of August 19, the Volgograd region came under a massive Ukrainian drone attack. The local airport temporarily suspended operations for security reasons. It is noted that at least 10 explosions were recorded overnight, primarily in the southern parts of the city. One of the targets was an oil refinery. No destruction or casualties were reported as a result of the attacks. The commander-in-chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Alexander Syrsky, stated that Russia is concentrating its forces in several directions and is preparing for new offensive operations. According to him, the situation remains difficult at the moment. The Ukrainian general added that the enemy is currently regrouping and focusing on two main directions. One of them is the Pokrovsk direction, which remains crucial for the Russians. They are moving their units from Sumy to the Zaporozhye direction. In other words, this will be the second direction where they plan to launch active offensive operations, Syrsky clarified. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha wrote on social media that the Russian Air Force strike on Sokhar oil terminals in the Odessa region is the second major Russian attack on the Azerbaijani state company in recent weeks. Moscow is doing this intentionally, acting against the interests of Azerbaijan. This once again shows the importance of a new level of cooperation between Ukraine and Azerbaijan, as well as the need for an adequate diplomatic and legal response to such attacks, the minister noted. As a reminder, Russia destroyed all 17 depots of Azerbaijan's state oil company in Odessa with drone strikes. The latest meeting in Washington has given rise to new talks and political analysis. After the negotiations at the White House, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that he could discuss the issue of territories with Putin. Will there be territorial concession or? The president of Ukraine admitted that during the meeting he had a fairly long conversation about the issue of territories. The situation was discussed using a map prepared by the Americans. Interestingly, the Ukrainian side also had the same map. Zelensky also stressed that no decisions unacceptable to Ukraine were made at the White House. The US president described this meeting, like the one with Putin, as productive. Putin was not left out of the US-Ukraine meeting either. Trump interrupted the negotiations with Zelensky to have a phone call with Putin for clarifications. The 47th US president is planning a trilateral meeting now with Putin and Zelensky. We should not forget that European representatives also had a role in this meeting. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen stated that they are continuing to work towards achieving reliable security guarantees and a long-lasting and stable peace for Ukraine.
The White House was once again the focus of global attention as U.S. President Donald Trump hosted Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and the leaders of 7 European powers for an emergency summit aimed at finding ways to end the bloody, more than 3.5-year-long war in Ukraine. The meeting, which followed a summit in Alaska between Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, generated both cautious optimism and deep concern amidst complex negotiations. The stakes for the day were extremely high. Kyiv and its European allies were consigned that Trump, in his eagerness to quickly end the deadliest conflict in Europe in 80 years, might pressure Zelensky to accept a peace agreement on terms favorable to Moscow. Unlike his previous disastrous visit in February, when Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance publicly criticized Zelensky, this time the Ukrainian president adopted a completely different approach. Instead of his traditional military attire, he wore a dark, formal suit, which earned Trump's praise. Our guest is all dressed up today, the host noted. The Ukrainian president went to great lengths to charm his American counterparts, thanking Trump 6 times within the first few minutes of the meeting, and even attempting to build friendly ties by giving Trump a letter from Ukrainian First Lady Olena Zelenska, addressed to U.S. First Lady Melania Trump. He also shared a warm handshake with Vice President Vance, showing a willingness to smooth over past tensions.
President Trump is at that point so committed to the idea of arriving at a peace settlement in Ukraine that he will go an extra mile to be nicer to people than otherwise he would have been, right? I don't think he has any great appreciation for President Zelensky. I think it's pretty clear that their relationship is actually quite problematic and there's friction there. And he continues, by the way, to threaten Zelensky in his tweets on Truth Social. But I think for the sake of getting things done, he held himself back, as it were, and decided to spare us the drama and the show that we had the last time around that Zelensky turned up in the Oval Office.
Despite Trump's optimistic words, as of Monday evening, there were still no concrete commitments regarding a peace deal. Experts identify 4 key points that were discussed in the U.S. A possible Putin-Zelensky-Trump meeting, U.S. security guarantees for Ukraine, deep disagreements over reconciliation, the sensitive topic of territorial exchange. The summit was attended by UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Finnish President Alexander Stubb, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. After the summit, Zelensky announced that he's ready to hold elections in Ukraine if there is a truce on the battlefield, in the sky, and on the water. Despite the diplomatic activity, a peace deal still seems distant. Analysts note that Putin has emerged from recent events recharged, having received international attention and recognition without making significant concessions. And the question arises, is Putin truly ready to sit down at the negotiating table with Zelensky? The day ended with a group photo of the leaders at the White House, but the real results will become apparent in the coming weeks and months, showing whether this diplomatic marathon will lead to long-term peace or remain merely a series of high-level meetings without tangible results.
In meetings with any world leader, Trump seems to mention his successful experience with Armenia and Azerbaijan. During a meeting with the president of Ukraine and European leaders, Donald Trump noted, and I quote, "I have already said that I managed to end 6 wars and establish a ceasefire. For example, the war in Congo lasted for more than 30 years. In addition to that, last week I ended the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan. It lasted 35 years. There are 2 wonderful countries that have been fighting." Statements regarding the Trump-Zelensky meeting have also come from France. In an interview with the TF1 television channel, President Macron stated that a meeting between Putin and Zelensky could take place in Geneva. The host asked him about the possibility of holding a meeting between Putin and Zelensky in Europe.
Et donc peut-être la Suisse.
It will be a neutral country that will be chosen, and we ourselves wish for that. And so perhaps Switzerland, I'm advocating for Geneva or another country for these meetings. Tomorrow we are launching this work on security guarantees. Tomorrow this work is somewhat of a prerequisite for all the meetings. In the coming days or perhaps the next few weeks, we will do everything to make this 2-way meeting happen. Then the idea is that really by the beginning of September, this trilateral summit can take place, but there is all the work beforehand that must be done on security guarantees. So the next 15 days are absolutely critical for us to finalize the work with the Americans, to put substance on the security guarantees, very important. But above all, we will lift the ambiguities. Does President Putin really want peace? We will know. If he holds this meeting for 2 and then for 3, it means he wants it.
And to conclude the broadcast, we will examine Trump's many hats. Trump showed his hat collection to Zelensky and Macron, which includes, for example, a hat with the inscription, "Trump is right about everything." This much for today. I'm Sona Tumanyan. Stay informed with ReNews. Good night.